conversation avoidance is insanely high. If there are troubles in the marriage, there's most likely probably 3 or 4 conversations that at least one of them know that conversation needs to be had, and they're either don't know how to have it or scared to have it, and they just kick it down the road and they can find something to focus on.
Welcome back to the show. My name is Remington Ramsey, and today my guest is Kalan Hubbard. Kalan, how you doing?
Doing well. Happy to be here.
We're going to get into Kalan and his new pursuit, his new speaking around entrepreneurmarriage, which he coined. How cool is that? You're coining your own words now and get to be on stage. Just a quick note, we have an email address called podcast@realproducersmag.com. If you get a chance to send us any type of feedback, which is what you like about the show, or who you'd like to see, or topics you'd like us to cover, be sure and do that today. Kalan, you're on the show because 2 of my franchise owners who were on the last show told me that you got to be my next guest. So that's coming highly recommended from Kelly and Devin, who were on one of our previous episodes. They've had you out a couple times to speak. They even featured you in the magazine from your speaking, but you've been in real estate for 10 years. Your wife's been in it longer. You guys got married in 2011. Jessica is your wife's name, and one daughter named Quinn, who's also 10 years old. You wasted no time there and decided after 10 years, 11 years of doing this, that you wanted to show other people how to do entrepreneurship, specifically real estate, at a high level with your spouse. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I looked around and saw some people that just meant the world to me, that great, amazing people building fantastic businesses and doing amazing, awesome, huge things in their careers while their marriages fell apart at home, and just broke my heart. And as we dug into it, we saw a need for it and saw that we could make an impact. So like I said, we're building this.
And what's interesting is, and it's super admirable, and I'm excited to dig into what it is that you cover in that content. But in order to have people listen to you, you first have to be good at selling real estate, right? And so in your heyday, you've got up to 120 homes sold. You're in a small area. Your average home price is a little smaller than some areas of the country. Where are you at located in Missouri?
So we're in Southwest Missouri. We live in Joplin, Missouri. So we sell all over the Southwest Missouri area. So yeah, when we were up and rolling and really getting after it, we sold 120 houses a year for several years. And now we're really focused on making an impact in this way with the speaking and teaching.
I love it. And when you have that much success and you have other people who are coming up either behind you or maybe even alongside you that are wondering, how did you get to be this good? That's probably sparking an interest just in helping teach in general. But as you're watching some of the passion that you have for marriage, and you're watching some of your friends and cohorts struggle in that area, it's cool to see how organically you created your speaking engagements now. So now you travel all over, including, I know it's all over because one of those ladies is in Alaska. So you've gone quite far to talk about this. But tell me about entrepreneurmarriage. How did you coin that term? What does it mean?
So entrepreneurmarriage, the mix of entrepreneurship and marriage, we looked at it, and the big thing that made us realize that this was a different type of marriage was really looking at the 2 marriages that were modeled for us from our parents. My mom and dad were very much a non-entrepreneurial careers for their whole career. They were both school teachers. Mm-hmm. And so they both taught almost 30 years apiece. And a lot of the people in my family, the adults, aunts, uncles, most of them were somewhere in that same type of careers. At the same time, on Jessica's side, it's full of entrepreneurs, whether it be locksmiths and builders and veterinarians and all kinds of things. And when we got married, we just came from 2 totally different worlds. Yeah. And we saw things very differently. And then as we got into this situation where we're both in the business, we realized we are going to have different conversations. We are going to have very specialized conversations than the conversations I grew up hearing at home from 2 school teachers. And they had a great marriage, still have a great marriage, it's just a different one than what Jessica and I have now. So we really dug into what does that look like? How is that built? What are those challenges? What challenges are different for us than a lot of other marriages out there? And then we started building some structures to have some of those great conversations that we're lucky enough to have.
You were in real estate originally though, right? Because you came from, were you an entrepreneur before you were in real estate?
Absolutely not. The running my own business was nowhere on my radar, really. When we got married, when we first got together, I was teaching as well. I was a school teacher. I taught middle school math. And in 2011, we started dating in May. I proposed in July. We married that September. It was boom.
Wow.
I make the joke I didn't know I was going to be in real estate, but I had that classic, once I got a verbal, I got it in writing really quickly mindset. So as soon as we knew this was, going to be what it was going to be, we tied the knot pretty quick. And then I went from April of that year, a single person living by myself, to September of that year, I'm now married and live with somebody. And we see things very differently. We see time off, we see investments, we see time at home, we see what a career can do for you very differently. So it was a big learning curve for me to understand this entrepreneurial world. So
it's fascinating that you followed in your family's footsteps. She also followed in her family's footsteps. I wonder what percentage of people follow in their parents' career path. Maybe not directly teachers to teachers, real estate agents to real estate agents, but how many people, because for me, there was entrepreneurs, it skips a generation almost, right? Because if you have someone who's an entrepreneur or business owner and they have kids, a lot of times either the kids will work for them and then inherit the business or just want nothing to do with it. And then in some cases, I'm sure they also have that itch, but my parents were not entrepreneurs, but I don't even know what I would do if I wasn't an entrepreneur. And then I wonder what my kids who are currently 7, 6, and 4, I don't know that they're going to be, but I wonder at what point like that shifts. Now you actually did follow in their footsteps. What converted you into wanting to be in real estate sales?
I remember a very specific conversation. My wife came home and she was on the phone with her dad, and she got off the phone and she explained that her mom and dad were going to spend a month in Colorado. And I couldn't understand what she meant. And she said it so flippantly and plainly. She's, yeah, they're going to be in Colorado. They've made, fixed some things and moved some things around work-wise, and they're just going to be in Colorado for a month. And I didn't know what she meant.
You couldn't fathom.
Okay, are they coming back on the weekends? She said, no, they're going to be there for a month. And I almost got agitated or mad. Like, there's no way what you are saying is what's happening. Okay, when they go now, when are they going to come back? And she's like, a month. I just didn't understand it. And then at the end of that conversation, she asked something along the lines of, do you think you'll be a teacher the rest of your life? And that really started me thinking of, maybe I do want to make a change. Maybe I do want to take more control over this life that we're building outside of work. Justin and I are big advocates of figure out the life you want outside of work. Where do you want to spend your time? Where do you want to vacation? Where do you want to invest? Where do you want to give? What do you want the time with your kids to look like? Figure that out, and then figure out what career is going to put you in those situations that also allows you to follow some passions. And so once we started changing what our life could look like, I decided teaching was no longer going to build that life. And then we made a switch and got into real estate.
In the capacity that you were teaching, you're still teaching now. It's just in a different scale, and you own the company. So you're,
right.
You're still realizing whatever dreams that you had originally in your vocation. It's just a different makeup.
I've always had that itch to teach. So this
to teach, yeah, to do that. I can tell. So you get into teaching. You tell me about at what point you decided to start Entrepremarriage within real estate, because you were still selling real estate, got good at it. People are asking you questions about it and you're seeing the need. At what point did you say, hey, listen, I want to spend more time talking about this within the industry than even selling homes?
Yeah, I really got into real estate, like I said, because it could build the life I wanted while I wasn't at work. So this real estate world allowed Jessica and I both to build the things we wanted. And then, like I said, these things started to change. We wanted more time for different activities or for travel and things like that. And real estate was doing that, but real estate wasn't a big impactful thing that allowed me to follow my passions. So we looked at, okay, what can still build this amazing life that we want, but also have major impact and allow me to follow passions. And public speaking's always been a passion of mine, and making an impact in people's personal worlds has always been a passion of mine. And yeah, I could sell you a house and I can tell you what color to paint your bathroom and what tiles to change to, but is it really going to make a big personal lifelong changing impact? Probably not. But in this, I can have people walk away and say, Kalan, I heard what you said. I'm going to have a great conversation with my wife tonight because of this. We're going to make some changes. That's impact. And that's a legacy that I'm super excited about.
Let's shift gears into marriage and entrepreneurship. Do you find that most the people that you're talking to is it most people are both entrepreneurs, or is a lot of them where there's one entrepreneur in the family and then there's another supporting role within that? What is the makeup of the people you're talking to?
Yeah, so it's a big mix. We define an entrepremarriage as any marriage that has at least one entrepreneur in it and the career and the marriage live cohesively. So there's 3 different dynamics. There can be an entrepreneur and a non-entrepreneur. That non-entrepreneur might be a W-2 employee, might be a stay-at-home parent, might be they work for a nonprofit, but there's one entrepreneur and one non. Or it could be they're both entrepreneurs working in the same business. That would be like Jessica and I. We ran our team. She was our CEO of her team. Then she became the broker of our brokerage. So we were both in the same business. Now I'm doing the speaking and teaching, and she's building a separate online company that she's working on. So we're both entrepreneur, but in different companies. Mm-hmm. So all those are the 3 major dynamics, and most of them they're either in it together or it's one entrepreneur and one not. It's somewhat rare. It's a little bit less frequent that I run into 2 entrepreneurs that are in separate companies.
What do you find is the number one thing that people are struggling with in their marriage when it comes to entrepreneurship?
I would say the conversation avoidance is insanely high. If there are troubles in the marriage, there's most likely probably 3 or 4 conversations that at least one of them know that conversation needs to be had, and they're either don't know how to have it, they're scared to have it, and they just kick it down the road, and they can find something to focus on, whether that be I'm going to dive deeper into the career and I'm going to fix my problems. Instead of having that conversation, I'm going to make more money, or I'm going to get bigger as a company. And they dive into it. And that just creates a myriad of problems in the wake of your career. Like your marriage gets lost in the wake behind the boat of your career. And that's where it usually ends up. And I think one of my favorite quotes from our workshop is, the success of your blank is directly related to the amount of tough conversations you're willing to have. You can put about anything in that blank: success of your marriage, success of your business, success of the relationship with your kids, relationship with your parents, relationship with yourself. Maybe it's your health, and maybe those conversations need to be had with yourself. But being willing to have those conversations is where it's at. So that's what we focus on in the workshop.
Now, are you helping them build their business efficiently so that because you're primarily speaking to real estate agents who are at least one factor of the entrepreneurship marriage, right? Are you speaking in other circles as well, or is it primarily real estate? Because that's
been organically where we've found a lot of our business. But now I've spoke not too long ago into a community here locally, spoke a big chamber event. So it was full of just everyone in the community that were small business owners were there.
So is there practical business advice that you give them that just right off the top helps them with their marriage? And here, I'll share with you where I'm going with this. So like we did a webinar a week ago and talked about goal setting. And one of the steps that most people miss within goal setting is not only informing other people that are involved in the goal because it's going to impact them,
yes.
but actually
preach it, go.
I'll take over seminar too. But so that's what I mean is, first of all, that's just, you should be doing that anyway for your business, even if it wasn't your spouse who you're talking to. If you have a goal that directly impacts a partner or a kid or someone in your life that is going to change the dynamic of how you do life with them, you got to involve them in that. So right there, if you don't do that, is it going to impact your goals because you're going to either feel bad hitting it or you're not going to hit it. And so do you give practical business advice within this marriage seminar? Like, where do you start? Do you start with the marriage or do you start with the business?
We focus on the marriage, and a lot of our tools and exercises and analogies all come from the business world. So we actually, in the workshop, we have an exercise where we talk about starting with the goal, figuring out what ripple effect that goal has on your house or your marriage, and then how to have a conversation to figure out what are the 2 or 3 other ripple effects that you don't know about that goal. If you take the actions to accomplish that goal, those are the ripple effects that are going to happen throughout your marriage and your household. And does everybody involved agree with the goal and the ripple effects that are going to happen to that goal? Because like you said, it happens all the time in real estate. Someone goes to, whether it be a conference or a team meeting or just they take a webinar.
They're sitting there taking notes.
Yeah. Oh, we sold 30 houses next year. How many are we going to sell this year? 45. Oh, fantastic. We're going to raise by 50%. Oh, that's great. Okay. What are the activities? I did 1 open house a month last year. I'm going to do 3 open houses.
Yeah.
And I'm going to attend this conference. I look at that. And when I look at that, I see, did you tell your spouse that they are now a single parent for 2 extra weekend, like 2 extra Sundays? Did you run that by them?
Yeah.
Did you run that financial commitment to go to that other conference? Are they okay with you investing so much here without going to a marriage conference? I'm going to read these 6 books. Have you read a book about being a good husband? Because they're watching you pour into this thing. They're watching you evolve. They're watching you become better. They're watching you stretch yourself for this thing. Do they see you do that for the marriage? Because if you ask, they would say, my marriage is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And all the books I read and the conferences I go to and the classes I take are on this thing. So we talk about that a lot.
What books do you have that you would recommend on marriage as it pertains to the business world?
In our workshop, I'll send you the slide. We show a slide with 3 books and a link to them all. Books that are either a business book disguised as a marriage book or a marriage book disguised as a business book. Number 1, I would say Please, Sorry, Thanks by Mark Batterson. That is a relationship marriage book, or it is a business book that is disguised as a marriage or a relationship book. Yeah. It will be in the marriage relationship section at the bookstore. It's a great business book.
What does it do? Yeah, walk me through that. I'm confused. How did he disguise it and it's actually a business book?
Yeah. He wrote it and it's meant for relationships and businesses. I think if a business person were to read that and take all of that information and approach to life and apply it to how they talk to their employees, how they talk to their clients, how they talk to their affiliates.
Yeah.
It would make a huge impact if they treated that book as a business leadership book.
I've heard that said about the Purpose-Driven Church that Rick Warren wrote, the second most famous book of all time, Purpose-Driven Life. And he also wrote one called Purpose-Driven Church, and a lot of businesses will steal that kind of and do what you said. What other ones do you share?
8 Rules of Love, Jay Shetty. Is a fantastic book for entrepremarriages. In that book, he talks about how part of your marriage should be chasing your passions and understanding your spouse's passions and how most of the time those passions align with a career. And he talks a lot about how to be a great support for your spouse's passions and things like that. 8 Rules of Love, Jay Shetty is a fantastic one. And last I'd say would be the 6 Working Geniuses. That is more of a business book. This guy wrote it. It's great for anybody who's working in fairly small teams of, say, a dozen or less, and understanding other people's working geniuses. However, if you took that book and took it home and you read it with your spouse and really understood the strengths and geniuses of your spouse, and maybe where you guys complement each other or where you have some weaknesses, one of those. So that book has 6 categories, and I can't remember the name of it now, but Jessica and I have one category that is in both of ours weakest places. Neither one of us has this thing, I can't remember what it is, as something that we're very strong at. So we have to be aware of that. And that's a threat to, or a weakness in our marriage that we're aware of now after going through all that.
When you do these seminars, do you get, you told me what you have noticed is the number one thing attacking marriages, which is a lack of talking when you need to, like having those hard conversations. But when you're doing the seminars or just speaking at an office, and I imagine in a smaller setting, you get hands raised, you get people feedback. What seems to be the overall arching theme of, or questions that people want to know? I would feel like, I don't know this for sure because I haven't heard you speak, but when I hear stuff like this, my head goes to people getting frustrated that their spouse doesn't support them or doesn't understand their role in it. And it feels like it could go very selfish in nature. And a lot of the principles that you're talking about is like what the entrepreneur, starting with the entrepreneur, not the other person, not the supporting person, but starting with the expectations of the entrepreneur in the relationship, in some cases too, how they lead in that example. But what's seems to be like an overarching theme of questions or things that people are struggling with as they try to build their business in their marriage?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say a theme that comes across in those questions would be coming from a place of the spouse, two spouses being in two very different places. I feel this way and he feels this way, or I want to go this direction and she wants to go this direction, or we see things very differently. And my advice to that is we have to get to a place where you guys are together working on the same problem with the same goal, which is protect the nest, make sure the nest is priority one. We're both here in the nest and our career is involved in the nest, and understanding where we want it to go and what are our obstacles along the way. In Jay Shetty's book, he talks about the number one thing that keeps a marriage going is not date nights, is not knowing your person's love language. And he lists all these things. It's understanding how to fight. And that's a very rudimentary way of saying it, but he talks about conflict resolution is the number one indicator of that relationship going the distance. And he talks about if you fight or you have a conflict, if I win and she loses, we both lost.
Right.
If she wins and I lost, we both lost.
Right.
The only way everybody wins we call that a win, is if everybody wins. And so it's getting to a place of, it's no longer me against you. It's us against the problem.
Right.
We're here and we're one side. The problem is the other side. Now let's work together and attack this problem.
Right. So when you say it's like she wins and I lose, that you hear that and you're like, and you're thinking, okay, a win situation is someone has to concede or that someone has to not get exactly what they want. That win is in the fact that you guys came up with something that is towards the common goal. So even though it's not exactly the way you thought, it's not a loss. It's not a net loss. It's, right. Oh, this was the issue and we worked together to figure it out. Now we both win. I love that perspective. Since we're winding down on time, I'm just curious, if you give us a mini seminar right now and give us like takeaways, because we talked a lot about what you do, but just give some practical advice for the end of this podcast where someone's listening to this and this is the top of their mind right now, right? Like this is a real estate podcast. Right now we're talking about marriage within real estate. And if we've gotten this far into the show, I want to leave this show with things that I can go home today. Let's say where it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and I'm driving home and this is a podcast I chose to listen to. What can I do when I walk in the door because I listen to Kalan Hubbard?
Wow. That I would say, get in your mind, like we just talked about, get in your mindset. It's not me against the other person. What can I do to get that other person? What can I say to the other person to make them understand, hey, I'm here with you. I don't want to be anywhere else. I'm here with you. I'm here in this nest. I will build this nest with you from now to the end of time. I just want you to know I'm here and we got this. And we got some problems or we got some things that we need to figure out. But I want you to know you and I, we're in this nest and I'm happy it's you and I. Get to that place first. Everything else can be taken care of afterwards. But you got to get there first. And getting there is going to take time. And just understand it's going to take time. But get to a point where you both know that's the goal. And everything else is going to fall into place over time. We talked about before the show, I'm going to give you a link that you can put in the show notes. And then there is a structure of a pretty simple exercise that can just get you and your spouse talking on a very safe place and talking about your marriage, called the SWOT analysis, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that download gives you some structure. If you're lost of where do we start, just gives you some structure to start having some great conversations.
I love it. Yes, you mentioned it's entreprenemarriage.com/opt/in. And obviously the best way to do that is just click on the subject line within our podcast notes. We'll send that link. Kalan, where can we find you on the socials?
It is at Kalan Speaks. And that's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all the socials. Kalan, Kalan, is at Kalan Speaks. Give us a follow. We're always trying to kick out more and more content, and we'd love for you to have us.
It's fantastic, man. And you're in the first year and a half of this journey of speaking, obviously 15 years into real estate with your wife. But first year, I would love to have you on the show later to see how things are going and how it's evolved. And after all the tours of speaking, meeting of people, like the next thing for you. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
As I said at the top of the show, if you could email us right now. So you just got home, right? You listened to it, then you talked to your spouse. Now you're at home. You're sitting at your computer. I would love for you to email us at podcast@realproducersmag.com. Give us some feedback and tell us who we should have on the show and what we should talk about. We'll see you next time.